Good morning. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our co-conferees. This is a joint conference committee number 1 on Senate File 153. Senate File 153, the title is Residential Real Property Taxable Value. This is, as I said, our first one. Mr. Chairman, you and I have talked a little bit offline, and I thought that maybe the two bodies kind of outline what the position is from when it left the Senate and how it's coming back to us now for consideration. And then we can go maybe actually get some informational, do some informational things to understand the interactions with this bill and some of the other bills that we've already passed and other programs that are out there. And then we can have a discussion about what next steps to the resolution. Any thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's great. That sounds like a great approach.
So if maybe I'll start just kind of for the audience and for the House members just to outline the purpose of the bill as I brought it forth. The purpose of the bill, as I explained on the Senate floor, was to codify what the voters agreed to or adopted in the general election, which was creating an additional property class and the potential of a subclass for the legislature. So this bill, the bill as it left our body, there were a few changes in the definitions at the request of the Department of Revenue from the introduced version, but the rest of the bill stayed intact, including the rates, as I guess saying we're going to stay uniform, and then we'll have more time to actually address changes, et cetera. So that's the bill as it left the Senate. Do any of my Senate colleagues have any comments on how it left the Senate? No. All right. Thank you. So the only changes in the Senate, just so for your edification, was in the definition of residential real property. I believe that was the entirety. We took out 35 acres and we struck trailers and mobile homes. That was the two changes on standing committee amendment in the Senate. So anyway, so maybe give us an update on where we are the bill that comes back to us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the changes to the bill that comes back to you, and I'll summarize this as much as I can. The one thing that was added to at least the owner-occupied component was there was an addition to give a consideration for deployed military was added to the bill, and that was added to paragraph. So I'm looking at your engrossed version that came over, and that was added to the paragraph down there on page 2, lines 19 through 22. We just added in consideration for deployed military. So the other changes that occurred in the House before it came over was some adjustments, and I won't go through the whole process and path, but the way it ended up was that in the first year in 2025, the 9.5% was changed to 8.3% for all residential property. And then in the second year, that 8.3 was changed back to 9.5 for residential property in general, but for owner occupied, it was set to 8.3. So in the second year, owner occupied would be 8.3, all other residential would be 9.5. So that is really the summary of the change of what you're looking at after you sort through all of the amendments. And I think there were about 4 amendments that affected that.
So thank you. I guess maybe your colleagues want to add anything. Okay. So just to clarify, I'm looking at the concurrence request. You also had a change that went from 6 months to 8 months. Is that accurate? And that stayed in the bill. There's some deletion. I just want to understand where we are. There's some insertions and some deletions. So I want to understand. I believe the 8 months is in the bill as in the concurrence request that we received. Is that accurate?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, that is accurate. That is. I forgot to hit that one. I apologize.
Yep, no worries. And then I want to clarify, because there was a second reading amendment, or Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2, which did the 9.5 and 8.3. And then there is a third reading, or another second reading amendment number 3. Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 that did the 9.5 and 8.3. But then I want to clarify with you, the second reading amendment number 3 looks to me, the way I read it in, it made everything 8.3. Is that your understanding of the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and that is accurate.
So,
Yes.
so that may be a little inconsistent with what you said, because
Okay.
I think what I understood was 8.3, 9.5 and 8.3 as it comes to us, but I see it as 8.3 straight through. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, yeah, that is accurate with that last amendment. That last amendment did take all residential property to 8.3.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And just to be clear, for the first year, it's all residential. Second year, it's all residential as well. There is no differentiation between the owner-occupied and the second. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, give me
Go
just
ahead.
1 second. I want to look at that one amendment just a hair closer. Mr. Chairman, I just want to look at that one amendment just a hair closer to make sure that is accurate. I was, when I looked at it, the amendment that changed it to 8.3 for residential in the first year, wanted to look at that amendment and make sure that was accurate. To change it to, sorry, you are accurate. That, it was changed to 8.3 for all property in the first year and ongoing years. You're accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions on the House actions from my colleagues in the Senate?
No.
Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I just wish to express my concern about the fact that we're kind of changing the bill radically and taking a bill that created a fourth class and a fourth tier, and then compounding it with other policy decisions that aren't appropriate and don't fit the bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. And just for my colleagues in the House, in the Senate, we actually have a rule about germaneness, not just a constitutional, but a ruling. And we did not take that up when we considered the House amendments, but that certainly could be something that would happen on a subsequent, if we go back and the Senate is not agreeable to whatever our maybe so potential solution is, that could come up. And it happens, I guess, fairly routinely with on the Senate floor. So I just throw that out there to the point that the good chairman of brought up. So go ahead. If you have any, you don't have to make any comment. I'm just telling you there's a reality on the Senate floor.
Do you mind if I make?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that. Now, we were not trying to, in the process of doing this, we were trying to put these triggers at these 2 different levels. So this 9.5, let's just talk about it, and if I'm not clear, just please push back. But this 9.5 or 8.3, we were trying to put it at the 2 different levels in the way that we did these amendments. So the one level would be, what percent do I apply at all residential property? And the second part was, and the subcategory of owner occupied, which you had defined, and so we were trying to stay within that framework. We were just trying to make sure that that percentage could be applied separately to in those 2 different areas. So hopefully that doesn't cross in or outside the germaneness. The conversation, I think, now is where's the right place to apply which percentage is what I believe. So hopefully we've stayed within that germane concept. That was our attempt, at least.
Yep, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think it would be good now, we've asked for some information just so we know the context of this bill, depending on what happens with this bill in the context of other bills. 69, there's several personal property tax bills that came out of the Revenue Committee, 2 of those. So I thought it might be helpful as we're preparing to hopefully come up with a solution on this bill. We understand the context of the actions we've already taken and the impact. As you know, there's local governments and folks that are interested in what the impact of what we would do with this bill is on top of what's already occurred. So is it still amenable, are you still amenable to kind of getting some information and some feedback from our staff and potentially from Department of Revenue?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely.
Thank you.
That would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Temte, you've provided some handouts for the committee, and I don't know if there's any for the public or not, but maybe if you would, yourself and Dalton, Mr. Quilty, would present. I have 3 in front of me, so just make sure we know where we are. Please introduce yourselves and proceed through these fact sheets. And we'll take questions, kind of, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman and committee, we'll kind of hold questions until they get through a fact sheet and then go through that and then go through the next one, and then we can try to do the combination, if that's acceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That would be great.
Go ahead, please, Mr. Temte. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Barlow, Chairman Locke, members of the conference committee. My name is Dean Temte. I work in the budget fiscal section of LSO. With me today is Dalton Kilty, and he actually prepared the fact sheet that have been distributed to you. So I will let him walk through those with you, and if guys need additional information, I may contribute that as well as needed.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In front of you are 3 fact sheets. The first one we'll take a look at is titled 2025 Wyoming Session Laws, Chapter 106, Homeowner Property Tax Exemption. So this was formerly Senate File 69, that 25% reduction in property taxes. What you'll notice in the top is some fiscal impacts from 2025 through 2027. And in the bottom table, you will notice the metrics at which they are judged. Now, a couple key things to note on this one. The fiscal impacts do vary. In the first year on former Senate File 69, you have all property exempted. In the second year, it goes to owner-occupied exempted. And in that third year, we actually run out on the long-term homeowners bill, and so they get folded into the Senate File 69 exemptions. The second one in front of you is Senate File 153, Residential Real Property Taxable Value as Proposed. This one details Senate File 153.
Just hold on.
Excuse me.
You went to a different sheet.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
This one details Senate File 153 as considered here today. So this is the bill as of this morning. And the final one is probably the most important one. That's going to be the one titled Senate File 153, Residential Real Property Taxable Values Interactions with 2025 Wyoming Session Laws, Chapter 106. And the most important column is going to be that central one right in the center, and that shows the combined impacts of Senate File, formerly Senate File 69 and Senate File 153. Now, because of the way these work, essentially what 153 does is lower the assessment value, and then Senate File 169, or former Senate File, now Chapter 106, goes and reduces that by 25%. So they're not truly additive because we're taking a smaller bite out of that pie. And I would stand for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that makes sense. That's what I kind of ran. So you, just to make sure I understand your order, you did the percent calculation and then you applied the 25%? Just wanted to make sure I understood the order.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir.
All right, other questions? Please. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Kilty, just so I can understand this, so the first column shows that the county, this is under Chapter 106, and then if I go to the next table you have down with the combined impact, the center column, it looks like with the combined impact, it changes about 5% in the revenue loss to the counties and 5% to the municipalities for a 10% property tax or 12% property tax relief for the homeowners. Is that correct? We get a 12% or 13% relief and it impacts about 5% to the municipalities and counties?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, sir, that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions? Yes. Senator McEwen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. been asking this question a couple times. Hopefully we've gotten to an answer. If this doesn't pass today, does that mean we can't collect property taxes, or can we? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So that might not be a question for the folks in the fiscal department, but we'll have the Department of Revenue up and maybe they can speak to their concerns. But Mr. Temte, you're not part of the legal staff, but if you wanted to punt, that's fine. And if we want more discussion on that, we might have to get actually some legal staff here. Go ahead.
Senator Barlow, Senator McEwen. I assume your question is if there is not agreement on the conference committee for Senate File 153. If that's the case, then the assessment rate would stay at the 9.5%, and it would go to the estimate for Senate File 69, which has now been assigned a chapter number. So Senate File 69 would still reduce, create the 25% exemption beginning in tax year 25.
Yeah, I think just for the audience, I think what the good senator is asking is, without creating a fourth class in statute, is there a risk that somebody could challenge that you can tax residential property at all? You don't have to opine on that. I'm just restating, I think, what my colleague was. Is that accurate, Senator? Okay, thank you. All right, further questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Just one more second on that. So, I mean, the issue becomes with the people passing the constitutional amendment. Do we need the fourth tier in our law to implement tax collection? I don't think so. So I think it would be okay if this bill were to die. But that is the question. That is a very important question we have to have an answer to.
Okay, thank you. Anything? All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. I don't see any more questions. Thank you for putting this together. There are, just a moment, if you would, Mr. Temte. There are several other property tax, ad valorem property tax bills out there that have already passed. Did you have a summary of what the impacts of them? I know they're not on these sheets, but do you have some numbers you could just share with us? Two of them were revenue committee bills. I don't know what their chapter numbers are now, but revenue committee bills. Go ahead.
Senator Barlow, I prepared a summary to distribute to you that I
Perfect.
just printed out right before I walked down here, so I'll pass that out now.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you, Dean. Would you give one to staff just as you're walking that way, please? I know you're part of staff and they're part of staff, and it'll get there, but. All right, if you'll walk us through this spreadsheet, that'd be great, Mr. Temte.
Senator Barlow, members of the conference committee, I identified 7 bills that deal with property taxes that have passed all the way through or at conference committee here today. The first one, House Bill 39, Property Tax Refund Program Revisions. This was merely a cleanup bill to address an issue that came up that involved the governor's veto, line item veto of the property tax refund program bill last session. So that one really it was deemed to have no fiscal impact.
Just for the members of the committee to recall, we had a bill that struck 165 and inserted 145. I think that is this bill. So go ahead, please, Mr. Temte.
Next, Senator Barlow, House Bill 279, Property Tax Exemption Order of Application. And this was a bill to clarify for the Department of Revenue. We're starting to have quite a few property tax exemption bills now, giving them guidance on which ones to apply in which order. Now, the fiscal note on this one, the Department of Revenue, and I think rightfully indicated that was indeterminable because it depends on everybody who's going to be applying for the different exemptions, and there's really just not a way to determine what that impact would be. But the important thing that happened in that one is an appropriation was added to that bill of $10.5 million. And that is to, that was actually the same amount which was in the governor's recommendation for additional funds for the property tax refund program for the next year coming up. So that bill, as Senate President signed, House Enrolled Act number 64, includes that $10.5 million appropriation. So I thought for that reason, you might be interested in that one. Senate File 48, business property exemption. Property tax exemption on the first, and as introduced, this was, it was on the first $50,000 of fair market value of business personal property. This was amended in the House up to $75,000. And the numbers right there are updated estimates that I did receive from the Department of Revenue based on that $75,000 exemption amount. However, that goes into effect in tax year 26, which corresponds to fiscal year 27 and forward. Senate File 49 was a similar, having to do with tangible personal property. It's Senate File 49 was tangible personal property index and depreciation. This bill addressed the issue for property which is held for a long period of time and how that property is continued to be valued. And that resulted in it will result in a decreased revenue. However, the Department of Revenue informed LSO that as amended, they weren't sure if they could come up with an estimate based on how it was amended. These estimates right here were the bill as introduced. I believe the Department of Revenue said, and you may need to get clarification from that again, I believe they indicated that how it was amended would reduce the severance tax or the property tax decrease from the introduced version, but at this point in time, that estimate is indeterminable.
Thank you. You want to speak to that, Senator McEwen, or this is one of the bills that came through your committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I wrote the bill. Really, at the end of the day, that bill as it was amended, the big part of it is it got rid of the escalators. It hits 20% and it stays there. And that's really all it does, Mr. Chairman.
So that if it stops at 20 and doesn't go to 0, that's why the fiscal impact is reduced. Is that was your?
Yes, I couldn't get it to 0. I tried.
Thank you.
Meat grinder.
Meat grinder. All right. Please continue with Senate File 69.
And as Senate File 69 has been presented already by Mr. Kilty, it's the 25% exemption of residential structures and improved land up to $1 million fair market value. And it applies to all residential structures in the first tax year. After that, it is only applies to owner-occupied structures. And this was the one where the fiscal impact is the revenue decrease is the greatest in the first year because it applies to all residential structures. That impact goes down in the second year because it only applies to owner-occupied, which my understanding is that will involve an application process. And then in the third year, that impact will, that revenue decrease will increase a little bit from year 2 because of the sunset of the current long-term homeowners exemption in current law, which will sunset after 2 years.
Okay, thank you. And we'll ask the Revenue Department of this, and so they can be ready, is actually the owner-occupied definition in Senate File 153 seems to be a little different than the one in 69. So I think we're going to have there's going to be some tension in that as well. So we'll just put that for the Department of Revenue to talk about when they come up. Please continue, Mr. Timpton.
The next one on the list is Senate File 81, tax exemption property owned by the state. And this bill came along because of a recent, it was a recent court decision that regarded the taxation of property owned by the state. And passage of this bill, is my understanding, would keep the status quo before the court decision, was my understanding. And there's a modest revenue decrease with that one in tax years 2026 and 2027. However, that act actually is repealed after 2 years. So it only, at this point, it only applies to 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
And then the final one is, the final one on the list is Senate File 153, which is what this conference committee is discussing today.
Perfect, thank you. Any, questions from any of your colleagues, Mr. Co-Chairman, on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Temke, the description you have for Senate File 69 says 50% exemption on first $1 million full market value. I thought we ended up with a 25%.
You did, that's an error. My apologies. I was trying to prepare this very quickly, update this summary very quickly this morning. My apologies for that error. It is 25% up to $1 million. Sorry about that.
Mr. Chairman, the numbers are correct at 25% or at 50%?
The numbers are correct at 25%.
Okay, follow up, Mr. Chairman. Long-term homeowners exemption, I don't see this on this sheet. Do you have any idea what the fiscal impact would be for the long-term homeowners exemption?
Oh, gosh, there were a couple bills that had to do with that, including a bill sponsored by by the Joint Revenue Committee. I believe it was Senate File 67. I believe the total estimate was around $30 million. But that estimate was made actually before the Department of Revenue even has all of the applications for that one in the first year. So that estimate could change based on how those applications actually end up getting submitted. But the current estimate on that fiscal note, it was around $30 million total.
And thank you for the question, and thank you, Mr. Tempe. I think the director will have some updated, at least projections or numbers to help inform that query. Anything else from my colleagues on this particular sheet? Anything on this sheet? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate your work. And I think I sent the email out at about 5 o'clock this morning, so I appreciate the efforts.
Thank you.
Director Henson, and whoever you need on your team, come on up. Ken, good to see you. Thank you. Go ahead, Director.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brenda Henson, Director of the Department of Revenue. My purpose is to answer questions and give you a little bit of information on legislation that passed in 2024 and what the impact of that has been. So I do think it's important to start off with, though, the difference that you just brought up related to the definition of residential real property in Senate File 69 versus in this bill, 153. So keep in mind, the reason for 153 is the constitutional change that occurred based on a vote of the people. I did provide a copy of the 2023 bill that is actually what the legislature passed and asked of the public. And that was to create a class for residential real property. Real property is a legal term. Land and structures. I encourage you to think of it as it's what you acquire when you receive a deed to a property. What transfers by deed? Real property does not include personal property. Mobile homes, which are transferred via a title, just like a motor vehicle, that's personal property. So Amendment A cannot group personal property in the same category with residential real property. All personal property, whether it's commercial, agricultural, residential personal property, that is still in that all other category pursuant to the change to the Constitution. So 153 can't include personal property in that definition. But 153 is not an exemption. That's a level of assessment. 69, however, is an exemption. The legislature has the opportunity to define what they want to provide an exemption on outside of the level of assessment. So that's the reason for the differences in the definition. And you're absolutely right, in 69, we will be applying the 25% exemption to mobile homes as well. But the level of assessment that we're discussing today would not be applicable to mobile homes. Any questions related to those definitions?
Questions, please, anyone?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, please.
So I think actually, and this is just for clarification, I think you actually had made that change to make sure that was covered in the engrossed version that came over, as I recall. I think you guys covered that well, so
Yes,
thank you.
thank you. That was at the request or advice of the Revenue Department, and we heeded that. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, you're correct on the engrossed piece.
I think my colleague, Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go back to my other question. If this bill dies today, we just go back to business as usual until we reattack it. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, legal counsel has provided me with the opinion that if this bill dies, that we'll continue to value minerals at 100%, industrial at 11.5%, and all other classes at the 9.5% as they exist today on the books. Obviously, any property owner could challenge that, but that's the legal advice that I've been given. If this bill dies today, or if this bill passes, we can continue with the same level of assessment at 9.5 in both spots. That's fine. I anticipate further discussion in the interim. This is a much bigger subject than what is identified. The original bill, as engrossed, simply clarified status quo. The legislature was recognizing that the Constitution had changed, addressed that within Title 39, but left the levels and any impact to zero as it came in the engrossed version. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. You had something? All right. Would you give maybe a little overview of the two other programs long-term, which is, you can do them in any order you want. There's other programs, so just go through those, Director. That'd be great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I thought I would start with the 4% cap on single-family residential structures that went into effect for the 2024 tax year. We know that that was approximately $19 million total, with $12 million being the 43 mills, and about $7 million that was revenue that did not go to local governing and taxing authorities in 2024. That's the only thing we've got for an estimate for 2025. The 4% cap on the single-family residential will be in place again for this year. In addition, that bill, it was House Bill 45, for 2025, it adds a 4% cap for the associated residential land for those structures. And we estimate, and all we've got to go on is what the difference is in land value from 23 to 24, because keep in mind, county assessors are setting their and establishing and appraising right now as we speak. So we don't know what the 2025 values are going to be, but we estimate the cap, the 4% cap on associated residential land to be about $9.5 million total, $6 million for education, and about 3.5 for the other taxing entities. House Bill 3 was the long-term homeowners exemption. The first year that it's available is 2025, and as stated previously, property owners have until the fourth Monday in May to apply for that exemption. It is a 50% exemption on the residential structure up to a 4-family unit and the associated residential land up to 35 acres. As of this morning, county assessors across the state have accepted 23,524 applications. When we look statewide, the average assessed value for those is about $18,000 assessed value that would be exempted. If we look at the statewide average mill levy of 68.504, that's about a savings of $1,230 to the taxpayer. The breakdown for that, as stated, we're at about 30 million total at that number, the 23,525. That would be approximately 18.3 million for the 43 mills for the schools, and about 10.7 for the other taxing entities. But we've got a couple more months that we anticipate getting additional applications. And so approximately somewhere between $30 and $35 million is what we anticipate this will cost. Now, Senate File 69 did have a provision that if the long-term homeowners exemption is granted, that they are not eligible for the 25% exemption. And so there is some overlap there, and I recognize that LSO has attempted to address that, but we weren't able. Keeping in mind with long-term homeowners, we don't know the value of those properties, and there is no maximum. There is no $1 million cap, similar to what's in Senate File 69. It's 50% of the total property. And just to give you an idea, in Teton County, as of this morning, we've got 635 applications. The average exemption in Teton County will be an assessed value of $89,788, based on what we know this morning. That's about a $5,100 exemption average in Teton County. So we know that Teton County's levy is also less because the county doesn't levy their maximum mills, and nor does the town of Jackson. So the average mill levy in Teton County is only 56.428, and that's the number that we used to arrive at an estimate as of this morning of about $3.2 million that exemption means in Teton County as of this morning. We will have better information. Keep in mind, all of these, no backfill, county assessors have to track those, and they're going to be required to provide a certified value that is taxable value to the State Board of Equalization no later than June 1st. So we'll know how much assessed value was not, where the mill levies were not applied for the 4% cap for single-family residential, the 4% cap on the associated residential land, and the long-term homeowners exemption, because none of those have a backfill, which means that taxing authorities will see that loss in revenue. The other piece that I wanted to mention, although it does have a backfill, is in 2024, this body increased the veterans exemption from $3,000 assessed dollars to $6,000 assessed dollars. That is backfilled, and that cost last year was about $4 million. And of course, for 2025, we assume that it will double to the $8 million that, and that's in the state treasurer's office budget.
But just a moment, would you, oh, okay. We doubled the exemption amount, so therefore the cost is going to double. My apologies. Okay,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and there's about
Yep, thank you.
19,000 veterans in the state of Wyoming that take advantage of the veterans exemption. And if you look back at my report that I provided to the Revenue Committee in November, you can actually, last year, you can actually see per county how many veterans, what that average veterans exemption was.
Thank you. Please continue.
Mr. Chairman, the only other program, as you mentioned, the property tax refund program, which comes after the fact. So exemptions are applied prior to the tax bills going out. The refund program is where that taxpayer has to pay their taxes. And then if they qualify, they can apply for a refund. The refund program is the only means-tested tax relief on the books today. I've provided a handout, hot off the presses, the new pamphlet that provides taxpayers with the information for the 2024 refunds. So no later than the first Monday in June, taxpayers can apply for a refund of their 2024 property taxes that they've paid. And the information that I've shared provides the updated income numbers. What will the income numbers, how much can they make in each of the counties in order to qualify for that exemption? Also, the exemption is 75% of the property tax bill up to the 50% median property tax for that county. And so you've got a report that shows what those numbers are. We did have 4 counties where the median residential property tax bill is actually lower in 2024 than it was in 2023. But you'll see that those percentage increases have been calculated for you. The property tax refund program received an appropriation during the original budget of $20 million. However, the program was expanded last year to go up to 145% of median household income. Previously, it was at 125% was the maximum that you could earn. So we expanded the program, but we didn't put any additional money towards the program, knowing that in the supplemental year, we could see what the applications were, and we could come in with a supplemental budget request, which I did for $10.5 million. And as stated previously, that $10.5 million is on the property tax bill for that allows us the guidance on how to apply these multiple percentage exemptions on the same residential property in what manner. And then, but we'll need that $10.5 million. We only had $5.7 million left of the $20 million to go towards the 2024 refunds. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I think I've covered the property tax relief. And the only other statement I would have is all of the fiscal notes that the Department of Revenue LSO office throughout the last couple months prior to the session, we were always utilizing the 9.5% as a basis for 25% of 9.5%. If the starting point, that level of assessment and the level of assessment is reduced, honestly, it's going to impact every one of those fiscal notes. And to the point of if they qualify for the long-term homeowners, and again, that's only available currently for 2025 taxes and 2026, and then it sunsets. Then what would happen is those folks that receive the long-term homeowners, then they would be eligible for the 25% that was allotted in Senate File 69. So a lot of moving parts, and I hope I haven't confused anyone, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. Please, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So real quick, so that 30 million is an estimate per year, 30 to 35, I think you said, correct, Director? And so just real quickly, now this is just very loose math, so bear with me here. If I understand correctly, the way, when we calculated the impact of 69, right? I don't think there was, and I may be wrong, and if Mr. Timty might correct me, but I don't believe there was a consideration of which of those houses were or were not impacted by the long-term homeowner. So roughly speaking, what we're looking at is approximately, and this is a rough estimate, approximately half of that long-term homeowner number is theoretically absorbed by the 69 impact numbers. I mean, my gut is, and I wanted to throw this out there and clarify if I'm wrong, but the way I look at it is, since you can only take one or the other, the people who are taking the higher impact, roughly about half of that impact is being absorbed in the 69 numbers. I wanted to throw that out. That was my interpretation of this data. And so I'm just kind of asking that question more than anything. And I made that based on the 50% and the 25% exemption, just attempting to cross those two numbers into a sanity number there in between. Thank you.
Go ahead, Director. I think as you're addressing that also, we need to keep in mind the definition of a residence is different in a long-term homeowner than it is in 69 as well. Because long-term homeowner is up to 4 units and the other is a single. So anyway, Director, please.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Locke, a couple more things to consider. The long-term homeowners is 50% with no maximum. The Senate File 69 was a maximum of $1 million. Unfortunately, we don't know which properties the long-term homeowners applies to. We will have those numbers in June, later part of June. But so it isn't as clean as doing the 25%. And the other piece of that is on 69, we do have that second year where it does then only apply to the owner occupied. And we know that approximately 71% of our single family residential structures are owner occupied. We don't have a real good feeling on those multifamily where I may own a triplex and live in one of those units. Long-term homeowners allows up to a fourplex where I can get half of my property taxes off, even if the 3 other units are not occupied by myself. So all of those things are coming into play, and the only information I've got are 2024 values. And based on Craig estimates of not having an increase in the all other category. When I say all other category for Craig, it's excluding mineral. Because of all the exemptions, we don't anticipate that there's going to be an increase for the Craig. So we haven't made any adjustments to 2024 numbers on any of these fiscal notes. So that's also important to know.
Thank you. Mr. Tempe, did you want to follow up anything on that particular question? Then we'll go to Senator McEwen.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Barlow, as far as the estimates for Senate File 69 that have been provided, we did adjust them for the long-term homeowners and actually adjusted it by half of that amount, since the long-term homeowners is 50%, but Senate File 69 just ended up at 25%. We took roughly half of the $30 million figure to adjust the Senate File 69 estimate.
Thank you. Senator McEwen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm still hung up on one thing.
Just one.
Well, at the moment. How could this be challenged? I mean, we say it could be challenged if we don't pass this. What are they going to challenge on? I'm not quite there yet in my mind. Could you clear that up for me?
Director, if you care to, please.
Mr. Chairman, having administered property tax law for 37 years, it's very difficult to anticipate legal challenges. I think the key here is that the Constitution has changed. That is done. And what we've got is a Constitution that reflects the 4 classes. And now we've got Title 39 that speaks to 3 classes. The intent of the original bill, based on my reading, was to keep things status quo for 2025 and simply acknowledge in Title 39 that we do have 4 classes. And define. Keep in mind, right now, today, other than exemptions, we don't have a definition of residential in Title 39 at all. That's what this bill does. This bill provides a definition of residential real property. The ability to create a subclass of residential real property is allowable by the Constitution, but it's not mandatory. This bill simply started to define what the legislative body would consider as owner-occupied residential. And keep in mind, the Constitution is very specific and only provides the ability to create a subclass based on owner-occupied. It does not provide an open ability for the legislature to create other subclasses, just the owner-occupied. So this bill was a starting point, but we know that there's a lot of discussion that probably has to take place related to what is residential real property for property tax purposes. But without this bill, we will administer the law just like we did in 2024, related to the level of assessment, because we have no other guidance from the legislature. If this bill does pass, we now have a definition of residential real property pursuant to that classification in the Constitution.
Mr.
Whether
Chairman,
it'll be litigated, I can't say for sure.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman Case.
I mean, we have to get moving along here. We're going to go into session at 10.
So-
I mean, we can come back. I'm
yeah.
not trying to, but for myself, it's coming down to two things. I don't feel that this bill is needed. If folks believe there's exposure to litigation, I'm willing to return to the Senate bill. But I think I'm really, I'd be happy if we didn't have a bill. And this whole notion of compounding the property tax relief that we've granted so far with other things in this, this whole policy of having 10 bills to attack one problem and have them compound each other is very difficult on staff, on the Department of Revenue, and our thinking about policy. You proposed a clean bill that just created the 4th class, provided some structure to that. I voted for that bill, but I'm not going to vote for any tax relief within the context of that bill. And I'm willing to kill the bill to achieve that end. Being straight up with you, sir.
Yep, and I appreciate that. So maybe let's, first, any further questions for the department or our staff? And then we will maybe make some initial comments. I don't know if we're going to take any action. Chairman and I will look for another time later today when we can come back together. But any other comments from any of the colleagues before we step away from this and go to the floors? Go ahead, please.
Thank you,
Representative
Mr.
Heiner.
Chairman. We have two chambers that voted overwhelmingly for this bill. I think it's irresponsible for 6 members to say we don't need this bill when our colleagues have said we do. I think the Joint Conference Committee's role is to try to negotiate somewhere in between the boundaries set by our 2 chambers and do our best efforts to negotiate. Now, for us to unilaterally just kill the bill, I don't think that's fair to the chambers because we have members of our chambers that have voted for this bill. So my position is we are here to negotiate, not to kill the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. And look, I wanted to get some information so that when we go into these discussions, if we continue these discussions, we actually have a context to understand the implications of what that position might be. And so that's what this morning was about, is understanding this. And I don't think you've heard a position of a member on this committee. Ultimately, whatever we decide goes back to the bodies. Bodies don't concur, then it becomes or a body doesn't concur, then we go to a potential second one if a presiding officer is so inclined, or both, or not. And then that would be the end of the bill in that context. So I don't know that it's off the table, we continue the discussions. I don't think that is the case at all. But anyway, on the information we have, is there any follow-up or anything that we need to continue to work on? Mr. Chairman, or anybody else? Anything else you need to further consider this?
I think we just, Mr. Chairman, I think we just set another time and get back together.
Okay, all right. The co-chairman and I will look at, it's probably going to be in the noon, over some kind of noon hour, which will probably be on breaks quite often. But maybe late morning or noontime, we'll make an announcement. We'll make an announcement off each floor and try to get folks informed about when we'll meet. Is that acceptable to you, co-chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So thank you. We will recess, not adjourn, recess this joint conference committee until a time